Everyone tells you that getting older is beautiful. They talk about wisdom, grace, perspective, the peace that comes with age, and some of that is true, but nobody, and I mean nobody, told me about the other stuff. The parts that blindside you, the things that change so quietly you don't even notice until they're already gone. So today, that's what we're doing. The truths about getting older that nobody bothered to warn me about. And if you're young enough to still do something with this information, pay attention. This one matters. I want to be clear about something before we start. I'm not here to scare you about getting older. Getting older beats the alternative. Trust me on that. But there's a difference between being prepared and being blindsided. And I was blindsided more than once. By things that nobody around me had the courage or the clarity to name out loud. Consider this me naming them for you. 10 truths. No softening, no comfort. Just what actually happens, starting with the one that surprised me most. Truth 1. Your body starts sending you bills for everything you did to it. When you're young, your body forgives everything, the bad sleep, the bad food, the stress you carried for years without putting it down. It absorbs all of it and keeps running as if nothing happened. Then one day, and it happens faster than you think, it stops forgiving, and it starts billing. Every shortcut, every skipped meal, every year you said, "I'll take care of my health when things slow down." It all shows up, with interest. I'm not saying this to make you panic. I'm saying this because the best time to pay the bill is before it arrives. Your future body is begging your current self to make different choices. Listen to it. Truth 2. Your circle gets smaller, and that's not entirely a bad thing. At 25, I had dozens of people I called friends. At 50, that number was half. At 70, I could count the real ones on one hand, and for a long time I mourned that. I thought something had gone wrong. Turns out, nothing had gone wrong. Something had gone right. The people who fall away as you age, most of them were never really there. They were convenient. They were circumstantial. They were colleagues and neighbors and acquaintances dressed up as friends. What you're left with after the decades of filtering is something rare. People who actually know you, who stayed through everything. Who doesn't need you to perform? A small circle of real people is worth more than a large circle of almost people. The math just takes a few decades to become obvious. Truth 3. Time actually does speed up, and the older you get, the faster it goes. When you're 8 years old, a summer feels like a lifetime. When you're 80, a year feels like a month. This is real. It's not poetic exaggeration. The older you get, the faster time moves, because a single year becomes a smaller and smaller fraction of the total life you've lived. Your brain stops marking it as significant. The terrifying part is that this means you can lose entire decades without meaning to. Drift through years of routine and comfort, and suddenly realize you've been moving but not going anywhere. The only way I know to fight it is to keep doing new things. New experiences force the brain to pay attention again. They stretch time. They make a week feel like more than a blur. Don't let life blur. Truth 4. The things you kept putting off become the things you can no longer do. There was a trip I always meant to take, a conversation I always meant to have, a version of myself I always meant to become. After things calmed down, after the kids grew up, after retirement. I waited too long, and then the window closed. Not dramatically, not with a big announcement. It just quietly closed while I was busy waiting for the right time. Getting older teaches you, slowly, then all at once, that the right time was always now. That the version of you who keeps saying someday is quietly stealing from the version of you who will one day have no more some days left. Whatever you're waiting on, to stop waiting. Truth 4. Regret is heavier than failure, and it compounds the same way interest does. I've failed at many things in my life, and I can live with every single failure. What's harder to live with are the things I never tried. The road I didn't take because it felt too risky. The relationship I didn't fight for. The dream I filed away under impractical. Failure hurts for a season. Regret hurts for a lifetime. And unlike failure, which teaches you something and moves on, regret just sits there, accumulating, growing heavier with every passing year. The older you get, the more clearly you see which choices were worth the risk and which fears were just stories you told yourself. Take more risks while you still can. You'll regret the things you didn't do far more than the things you did. 5 truths in. And I want to ask you something before we go on. Which one of those has already started happening to you? Drop it in the comments. Seriously, because I guarantee you're not alone in it. And sometimes just naming the thing out loud is the first step to doing something about it. 5 more to go. And the second half, these are the ones that took me the longest to understand. Let's keep going. Truth 6. You will slowly become invisible, and learning to be okay with that is its own kind of freedom. When you're young, people see you. They respond to your energy. They make room for you in conversations, in rooms, in plans. Getting older means gradually becoming invisible to a world obsessed with youth. People talk over you, overlook you, assume you have nothing relevant to add. For a long time, that stung. I spent energy trying to stay visible in ways that were exhausting and ultimately pointless. Then I realized invisibility is also freedom. Nobody is watching. Nobody is judging. You can finally just be who you actually are without the performance. The people who are worth being visible to, they'll still see you. Everyone else? Let them look past you. You've got better things to do than be watched. Truth 7. The things you thought defined you stop mattering. And that's terrifying until it isn't. For most of my adult life, I knew who I was. I was at my job, my role, my achievements, my reputation in a particular room. Then retirement came, or age came, or circumstance came, and all of those things fell away, and I didn't know what was left. That identity crisis is one of the least talked about experiences of getting older. We prepare people for the physical changes. Nobody prepares you for the day you look in the mirror and realize the labels you've been wearing for 40 years no longer fit. What's underneath those labels? That's who you actually are. Getting older forces the question. It's terrifying. And it's also the most honest conversation you'll ever have with yourself. Truth 8. Your relationship with your parents completely changes, often right before you lose them. At some point, the power shifts. The people who raised you become the people who need you. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the window to really know them before they're gone. I spent decades seeing my parents as my parents, not as people, not as individuals with their own regrets and fears and unlived dreams. By the time I started asking the right questions, time was running out. Some conversations happened, many didn't, and those missing conversations are a particular kind of grief I carry quietly every day. If your parents are still alive, ask them the real questions. Not, how are you feeling? The real ones, about their lives, their choices, their regrets, their proudest moments. Do it now. The window is shorter than you think. Truth 9. Your energy becomes your most precious currency, and most people don't realize it until it's running low. When you're young, energy feels infinite. You push through. You stay up late. You say yes to everything and recover by Tuesday. Getting older means energy becomes finite, limited, non-renewable in the same way it used to be. And this forces a clarity that youth never does. You have to choose. You cannot do everything. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot give everything to everyone and have anything left for yourself. The people who age well, and I mean really well, are the ones who figured out early where their energy was best spent and ruthlessly protected it. The people who age hard are the ones who gave their energy away to everything and everyone until there was nothing left. Your energy is the resource. Spend it as it matters, because it does. Truth 10. The life you have is the one you actually built, not the one you planned. At some point, you stop living in the future and start living in what is. And when that happens, you see with brutal clarity the gap between the life you imagined and the life you actually built. For some people, that gap is crushing. For others, it's surprisingly small. What makes the difference isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's whether you showed up consistently for the things that actually mattered to you, or whether you let the urgent crowd out the important year after year, decade after decade. The life you're living right now is the sum of your daily choices, not your big decisions, your daily ones, what you spent your attention on, what you let slide, what you protected. You're building your future right now, today, in this moment. That's either the most motivating thing I can say to you or the most sobering. Probably both. Build it as it matters. Because when you get to the end of things, you'll see very clearly that it did. 10 truths. None of them is comfortable, all of them real. And here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Getting older is not something that happens to you. It's something you participate in. Oh, every single day. The person you'll be at 70, 80, 90, they're being built right now by the choices you're making today. You can't stop time, but you can decide what you do with it. If this opens something in you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me which truth hit hardest. And if you want more honest conversations about the things nobody says out loud, subscribe, because this is what we do here. I'll see you in the next one.